Alright, my father and I, we had a property up at Cowra, up in the Central West, and we were going up there to do some work on it about 4 o'clock in the morning. We were driving up the highway, and as you get towards, in between Woodford and Hazelbrook, we were just driving along, there was no other traffic around, and we saw this really huge sort of thing running down towards us on the opposite side of the road.
So you were actually heading towards Bathurst, and this thing came from the left-hand side?
Yeah.
Can you pin down the exact location of where it happened, or is it...
I don't know the name of the street, but as you're going up the Great Western Highway, just as you get to Woodford, on the left-hand side there's the turn-off to go to where the Rural Fire Brigade is.
Yep. Right
where the bridge is there, but we saw this thing on the right-hand side of the road.
Okay, so it was on the right, yeah. Well, again, take me from the point where what was in the headlights of the car, I assume, or...?
Yeah, we were just driving along and we could see this thing sort of running down the road, and we thought it was just a person, and the way it was running, it looked like it was in trouble, sort of running and stopping and looking around, and so we thought it was someone who might be hurt or being chased by someone.
Yeah.
So we sort of stopped and or moved the car side on. In the middle of the highway, there was no traffic around, and the headlights are pointing straight at this thing, and it would have been taller than 6 foot, like a lot taller, like really big, and the shoulders just sort of, not like a normal person, they just came straight out from its body and a really long way out, and had really, really long arms, like down past its knees, and seemed to be covered in hair. Like it didn't have clothes on, but you couldn't see genitalia or anything like that, so it was covered in some sort of hair.
Yeah.
All over it. And the way it was running was sort of like loping, like it was so big and so heavy, it was just loping along.
Okay, what happened after you, I guess, brought the car to a stop?
Yeah, it sort of stopped and looked at us only for, I don't know, about 5 or 6 seconds, and then turned around and ran down a side street on the right-hand side of the road. And right down the bottom of that, and we followed it, we drove across the medium strip and followed it, and down the bottom it runs into bush, and this thing just went running off through the bush, and you could see, and these aren't small trees, they're huge trees, and the treetops were just shaking around like it was pushing them out of the way.
So all up, how long did the experience,
Probably about 4 or 5 minutes.
Wow, that's quite a long time.
Followed it down this street, it would sort of run and then stop and like face towards us, and then turn around and start running again. And it went down through into the bush, and we didn't follow it any further because it was dark and we were afraid and all the rest of it. But you could see the treetops sort of swaying and moving. And we went up to Cowra and did our work over the weekend, and when we came back 3 days later, we went down into the bush and looked, and these trees, not huge trees, but like big enough so that a person couldn't push them over, were snapped. They were like, just the tree trunks were snapped over, they were just pushed out the way.
Wow.
Where this thing had ran through. And Dad knew a couple of the people in the area and spoke to them, and they said that they quite often they thought it was just like a person or kids running around being stupid or something, but something down in the bush, and the trees would always sway and move around and things.
So this was in Woodford town itself?
Yeah, but no one ever sort of really went down there because they were afraid or thought they were teenagers being stupid and drinking or something.
And this is on an area on the right-hand side of the road going towards Bathurst. Is it on the Sydney end of Woodford, or the other end, or in the middle of Woodford?
No, the Sydney end of Woodford.
Right. Okay. Look, let's just, I guess, start the beginning again. This would have been winter time or summertime you had your...
Winter. Or
okay.
Just coming on to winter, between autumn and winter.
And what sort of vehicle were you driving?
A ute. Yeah, Hilux, Toyota Hilux ute.
Okay, and it was your dad was in the car with you?
Yep.
And did you have just standard high beams or driving lights?
Both. We used to go roof shooting all the time, so we had a spotlight and everything on it, which we had turned on. We'd sort of turn the spotlight on and off, and when we turned the spotlight on, this thing would stop and turn around and look at us, and then as soon as the light went off, it would turn around and run away. Just like kangaroos do. Like if you're hunting kangaroos, you turn the light on and it blinds them and they stand there staring at you, and as soon as you turn the light off, it runs away again.
Okay, so I guess let's just take it. You were coming up the road. Did you see the animal in the lights first or outside the lights first?
Outside the lights first.
What? Who saw it? Yourself or your father?
No, I saw it first.
Did you say something or?
Yeah, I sort of, because I thought it was a person who was in trouble the way it was running. I sort of pointed out to Dad that there was someone running down the road.
When you say running down the road, was it on the road or on the road verge?
A road on the footpath, sort of on the medium strip, the little grassy strip down the side of the road.
Okay, and it was running away from you?
No, running towards us.
Okay, so it was on the right-hand side running towards you. You were travelling reasonably fast?
Oh, not very fast, probably about 60 k's. I think it was a 60 okay area through there because their shop's not too far away.
Okay, and you just had this impression of this thing running towards you.
Sort of run and then stop and run and stop, and we slowed down as we got towards it.
Was this a long flat area or a bend or?
No, just it's straight, but it's on a slope, like sloping down towards us. So.
Oh, okay, all right. So you had it was visible. This impression of this thing was visible quite a ways ahead.
Yeah. That's why at first I thought it was just a person who might have been, a girl being chased by someone or something, because it kept stopping and looking around and looking behind it and running again.
Okay, when you say it was it running like it wasn't running like a human, or it was running like a human?
No, it was, as we got closer and you could see it clearer, it was like it was loping along, like if you've got a sore foot or something and you try and run, like you're sort of all off balance, and it's sort of hard to explain. Something that's really tall and really big can't run like a normal thing can. It's got to sort of lope along.
Yeah. Okay, and eventually I presume, were you discussing it with your father as you got closer and closer, or you just said there's a person and...
Yeah, and as we got closer we realised that it wasn't a person, or it was a...
At what point did you realise it wasn't a person?
It was probably about 40 metres away. That's when it stopped and sort of we turned the spotlight on and it sort of looked into the light. And you could see that it was absolutely huge, like it wasn't a person. And just the way it was built, shoulders came straight out from its neck and really, really long arms.
Okay, when you mentioned, when you saw that, were you getting any reflection of eyes from the animal? Was there any colour in the reflection, or was there any reflection?
I don't think so.
Okay, so this thing, you hit the spotlights and this thing then stopped?
Yep, it just stopped like it was stunned in the spotlight.
And you then got, I presume, kept moving towards it?
Yep, yeah, we sort of slowly were crossing over, because this is like a 4-lane highway, but because it was 4 o'clock in the morning there's no traffic around, and we went over the median strip and sort of started moving towards it, and the closer we got it would slowly like sort of back away, and then as soon as you turned the spotlight off it would run, but then as soon as you turn the spotlight on again it would stop and turn around and face you.
Okay, this at this time were you speaking to your father about it, or was you just sort of approaching it, or was there any discussion?
No, just sort of staring at it and following it along. It wasn't until it finally ran through the bush and then we started talking about it, because we could see the way these trees were swaying, and they weren't like saplings, they were huge trees. And it wasn't a windy night.
What were you feeling when you saw it? Were you amazed, stunned? Did you believe what you were seeing? I mean, what was your emotional response to it?
A little bit scared, sort of. Dad thinks that he's seen that sort of thing quite often. He used to be in the army and they used to go on training operations through the bush all the time. But I was a bit unsure of what it was.
Okay, now when you had that good, I guess you hit the spotlights the first time and you saw it pretty much front on?
Mm-hmm, yep.
You said it was bigger than a person, bigger than 6 foot. I mean, can you get an impression, was it like 1 or 2 foot higher than 6 foot, or?
Oh, probably about 4 or 5 foot high. It was not 4 or 5, 1 or 2 feet, sorry. Yeah, it was.
So you think it might have been 8 feet, somewhere around that?
It was really big.
Okay, and...
it was like a fully grown cow standing on its hind legs. The height that would be, a really big thing.
Okay, was it... you mentioned that it was a solid looking animal, and you mentioned the shoulders came straight out. The arms, where did the arms come down to?
Well, the hands almost down to its knees. Really, really long arms.
So it didn't look like a person?
No.
Okay. In terms of its width, it was a wide animal?
No, very, very slender. Sort of just like how an adult male would look, very slender, like no hips or anything like that, but just these massive shoulders that stuck right out and really long arms.
Were the shoulders wider than the rest of the body? I mean, or did it taper down, or was it pretty much straight down?
The shoulders were a lot wider than the rest of the body, and then the rest of the body was just straight. So.
Okay, now, you mentioned what sort of colour was the animal?
A reddy browny sort of colour.
And the hair, you mentioned it looked hairy, or?
Hairy, really matted, dirty sort of hair, like at a cow we used to see wild goats all the time, that sort of like really dirty, matted sort of looking hair.
Okay, you got to look at the animal's face.
Mhm. Yeah, it virtually human, but it had like a really strong face, like a strong jawline, a normal nose and everything like that. It hardly had any hair on its face, but yeah, just a really strong jawline.
Okay, so it looked like a human face, more than an animal face?
Yep, looked like a human face, except that the jaw was just extremely strong, and yeah, it looked like a boxer being punched around a bit or something like that.
When you say jaw was strong, do you mean did the jaw actually protrude out, or was it like a muzzle, or was it just like a big?
Like an undershot sort of jaw, like the jaw was undershot underneath.
Yeah. And the shape of the head, was it like a human head or different, or?
Like a human head, yeah, shaped like a human head, maybe a little bit longer than a human head, but a really strong jaw, and the eyes were set a long way back in the face.
Were they light or dark eyes? Hard to tell.
I don't know.
Yeah. But did it have a long neck or a short neck?
Short, virtually no neck at all.
Okay. And was there anything else visible in the body? I mean, was it hairy all over? Pretty much the same, or?
All over except for the face. Yeah, like massive feet, like really big feet, really big hands. Everything else was virtually like a human, but shoulders that stuck way out, big feet, big hands, and the face looked really strong.
Okay, when it how much? Could I ask how much you weigh?
64 kilos.
You got any sense of what this thing would have weighed in terms of, I guess, twice as much as you, 3 times?
Probably at least twice, if not more. Yeah, Dad's about 80 kilos, and it would have been heavier than him, or at least a lot stronger anyway to do what it did to the trees. But the way it was sort of loping along, like it had a lot of weight, and it was hard to lift its feet up, like it would gallop along.
Was its hands sort of, when it was running, was its hands up and running like a human, or sort of down by its side, or somewhere else?
Just down by its side. Just hanging down by its side.
Okay. Okay, well, so you got in the spotlight and you were approaching towards it. You then went across the median strip. This thing, it then took off to its left down the street, or it come up to a road junction, or?
Yeah, it came up to a side street that ran off the highway, and it turned and it ran down there. And every now and then it would just stop and turn around. And if we had the spotlight on, it would stop and look. But then as soon as you turn the spotlight off, it would turn and start running again.
Okay, this, how close were you to it? I mean, at the closest point?
Probably about, not very far, probably about 20 or 30 metres away.
Okay.
It really wouldn't let us get any closer. As soon as you try to get closer, it would run off. And we couldn't get out of the car or anything. We stayed in the car. If we'd got out of the car and walked towards it, we might have been able to get closer, but with the noise of the engine and stuff, it would run further away.
Okay, do you remember the name of the street that it went down, or?
No idea.
Oh, okay. So is it a residential street?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were houses on both sides of the road, or?
Yep. But as it was running down the street, it was in the middle of the road, or sort of swaying all over the place. It would be in the middle, and then it would run off to the side. And it just looked really confused and really out of place, like it was being chased, or just it wasn't used to being around houses or cars or something.
Oh, okay. So it was actually moving from the left to the right hand side of the road.
Yeah, it looked really disorientated, like it would run and then stop and weave around all over the road, and
But all the while moving towards that sort of the end of the road or the bush area?
Yeah, moving towards the end of the road towards the bush. And then as it seemed to get closer towards the bush, it didn't look quite so disorientated. Like once it could see the bush, it just bolted and ran straight ahead. It started running a lot quicker and ran straight through into it.
Okay, when it actually was full on running, was it moving, I mean, quite quickly like a human, or?
Probably not as quick as a human, but for its size, it was running quickly. Like you wouldn't expect something that big to be able to run that quick.
Okay, how far did you follow it up the street?
The street's probably about a kilometre up the street, sort of stopping and starting.
That's quite a long way.
Yeah, it's a pretty long street, and then it just runs down into bush.
So all this time you were fairly silent with your dad in the car with you?
Yeah.
Just as you were watching, were you just sort of fascinated by the thing, or?
We're both interested in that sort of thing.
Oh, okay. And then it zipped at the as soon as the houses ended, it ran into the...
It just ran straight down into the bush, yeah. There is a bush track, but it didn't follow that. It just went straight through in amongst trees.
Okay, and this was right at the end of the last house on the left or the right-hand side of that road?
The left-hand side.
And then you mentioned... actually, when it was running up the street, were there any other noises? I mean, could you hear it, or...?
No.
Okay. Were there any dogs barking or anything like that around, or...?
I think there were, further towards the end of the street, there were a couple of dogs that were going pretty crazy, but that could have just been from the car or whatever, but...
Yeah. You didn't smell anything, or...?
No, I don't think we were close enough to.
Yeah, okay. Now, you said you come into the end of the road and this thing had disappeared in the bush. Did you then put, the spotlight on the bush, or...?
Yeah, put the spotlight on the bush and moved around, but couldn't see it was gone, but you could see the tops of the trees swaying and moving around.
And these were big trees?
And hear crashing noises, and then we didn't follow it. We were a bit afraid and stuff, and it was the middle of the night. But 3 days later, we came back and we walked down through the bush track, and trees that fairly big, like waist sort of size, were knocked over. Like not uprooted, the trunks were just snapped over.
You mean snapped in the... About how far up from the ground were they snapped?
About a metre, a little bit higher, about 1,200 off from the ground.
And a few of these, you saw quite a few of these trees have been snapped?
About 6 or 7. Not right on the edge of the bush, but as you got a little deeper in, then they were not.
Now, would you think you'd be able to sketch this thing?
Yeah. Yep.
Can I give you an address to send a sketch to? Because I'd love to get a sketch. It sounds like you've got a great view.
Yeah, hang on. Another phone machine.
Oh, no probs.
Alright.
I'll just turn off the tape recorder. So, on the way after the trip, I mean, did you talk about it with your dad? I mean, what were you discussing?
Yeah, just talking about what we had seen and things like that he had seen at other times. Was like being in the army. His father was in weapons research for the army, and he used to travel around with his dad all over the world, and he's seen strange things all over the place. And there was a time I was at a friend's house who also lives in Woodford, but on the opposite side. She lives on the left-hand side, and I was staying at her house, and we walked down through the bush, and there were caves that we used to go and play in down there.
Yep.
And we walked down, and as you got close to the cave, you could smell like this rotten sort of, really like an animal was dead down there or something. We kept walking down to see what it was, and as we went to this cave, it was full of dead birds and lizards and chunks of clothes, because they'd been in the newspapers that they thought there was some pervert running around stealing clothes off people's washing lines.
Yeah.
And this cave had chunks of really matted fur, like I'd seen on this thing that we saw running down the road. And what street was that at the end of? It's called Ritchie's Avenue.
Is it far off the road there, or?
Yeah, it's a fair way off the road.
And was that in a particular gully that's got a name, or? That's stretching your memory.
It probably has a name, I don't know. It might just be called Woodford Gully, I don't know. It's at the back of Woodford. As you're going up the highway, it's on the left-hand side, on the other side of the railway tracks. And right down the end of Ritchie's Avenue, there's bush all down through there.
Okay, did you ever hear of any other stories through the mountains, or, I mean, being there now, apart from Neil's, I guess, and...
Yeah, a lot through Mr. Frost, but not just lately. But, yeah, so there'd be things in newspapers sometimes about it, but just lately I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Black Panther stories and stuff like that. But,
in the mountains?
Yeah, in the mountains and out at Cowra and at, it's called Lithgow, all out through there.
Oh yeah, the black cat stories in the mountains are quite well known. Well, I guess anything else, I guess, impressions or anything we haven't covered in our chat about this thing?
Not really. Just that, yeah, it looks really human, but have you ever seen, like I did a project once on the kids over in Romania when their families were too large, they'd throw the kids out into the bush.
Yeah.
Most of the times they'd die, but sometimes they'd live, and eventually in years' time you'd see them on the outskirts of town.
Yeah.
They brought these kids into town. They were like wild animals, and their canines had grown longer, and they were covered in hair and just a lot wilder, and their bone structure was bigger, and it reminds me of that.
This thing, when you actually saw it face on, did you get an impression of like it was angry, scared?
Just scared more than angry. Yeah, it just the way it kept looking around and stopping and starting. Yeah, it looked really disorientated. But once it saw the bush, it was like that must have been where it lived, or it knew that area. And as soon as it could see the trees, it just ran straight towards them. And it seemed a lot happier then. It seemed to know where it was going once it saw the trees.
Wow.